So, one of the things that I have gotten in trouble for my entire life, it seemed, was asking why. So I always question the problem, question the question before I'd answer it. So a teacher would ask me a question, and I'd go, well, I want to know why you want to know the answer to that question, because maybe you're asking the wrong question. And that's not copacetic in school. And I'd always do it, and I do it with my parents, and I do it with my friends. And I remember when Dan said, the problem is not the problem is the way we're thinking about the problem. And so I was already naturally always, before I'd go to the answer, I wanted to define the problem better. I wanted to define the question better before we got to the answer. So when I heard Dan talking about that, he had me. He had me, because that was something that I was already naturally doing, but I didn't have the words for it, and I didn't have the sophistication for pulling it off without looking like I was being argumentative. So as soon as I heard Dan talking about the problem not being what we think it is, it's the way we're thinking about the problem, it resonated with me. He really gives all the entrepreneurs that he assembles the framework for thinking, and thinking strategically in a way that removes the constraints and the obstacles and the bureaucracy that really every other business person in their industry is experiencing. I had a system and I had a method, and I'd already done it for myself for years, where I transformed healthcare from a burden for my company into a competitive advantage that I was using to hire the best employees and gain a productivity level in my industry that nobody else was getting at the time. And even now, I don't think anyone else is getting the levels of productivity we get. But I'd used something that's very negative for most businesses: healthcare cost, healthcare burden, healthcare frustrations, and I solved it and turned it into the biggest competitive advantage my company used. Dan was very, very quick to say, this is what matters. And our whole conversation was around, how do we turn healthcare from a burden into an advantage for other entrepreneurs? And that in itself was powerful for me, because I was, in my mind, I had 100 different roads I could have gone down. And it was really clear to me when Dan pointed out, that's the road that makes the most sense for me, because it happens to be the people I resonate with the most, that I care about the most. And Dan Sullivan was instrumental in that, because without really Dan giving me the framework for thinking, and to some degree, I know it sounds a little weird, but the permission to think that way when nobody else was, it was very powerful for me at that time in my life to leave the traditional way of thinking about healthcare, traditional way of thinking of anything. So the best decision I ever made was joining Strategic Coach. The stupidest decision I ever made was waiting 2 years to do it when I knew about it. And I just saw a different way of thinking that just gave me permission to do things that made a lot of sense to me, but didn't make a lot of sense to my peers at the time. It's not just about teaching a technique. That might be the first couple of years, but after a while, you're going into the workshops with your own set of problems and challenges and opportunities and conversations that you're having that you might not have been having a week or a month earlier. And it's rare that anybody leaves a Strategic Coach workshop without some major frustrations solved or major procrastinations moved through. Rare. I mean, that's one of the common things I always hear after a workshop is how glad they were they came, because life just gets easier. Because we apply the things we hear to the most challenging things we're dealing with, or the greatest opportunities that are in front of us.